Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Down Syndrome Center podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Kishore Velody. And as part of our Meet the Nationals series that we are doing, today we are joined by Michelle Whitten from Global Down Syndrome. And we are so excited to have you join us here, Michelle. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, what I do with all of our speakers, and I think even more importantly for this series that we're doing, is that you would share a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then why you love working with this population of people.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm Michelle, and I come from actually the cable TV industry. I was a cable baby. And then about 19 years ago, I had my first child, Sophia, who happens to have Down syndrome. And I do have a son without Down syndrome who's 16. Don't want to forget about him. Mm-hmm. And then we looked around and said, okay, what's happening in the Down syndrome world? I had never met a person with Down syndrome before I got the prenatal diagnosis. The way I got the prenatal diagnosis was very uncomfortable and kind of eugenic-y. Is that even a word? And so we were like, wow, there's a lot to do here in terms of medical care. And then, of course, we settled on research and medical care, really. So, how do we then elongate life and improve health outcomes? We landed as a family on research and medical care, and then we created the Global Down Syndrome Foundation to deliver on that mission to elongate life and improve health outcomes.
I love that, and it's been so great to work with you all on several projects over the years, and definitely I think we can say that those of us with family members with Down syndrome, when we recognize that need and it hits really literally in our home, it becomes a passion. And I love that passion and drive that you have had with Global Down Syndrome Foundation. So give our listeners an idea, just a basic idea of like the history of Global, like when did it start and how did it start and those types of things.
Yeah, I think because I come from industry, you were very much into due diligence. Like, let's do that market research. And maybe we did it for too long, but we went and we visited pretty much every major Down syndrome medical center and research center. There weren't a lot that had both, right? You go to one place and it's like, and everybody was so welcoming and, really because I think most hospitals are geographic, they didn't see it as competitive. So we had, the chair of pediatrics from Children's Hospital, the dean of the School of Medicine here at University of Colorado, my family and a few others all go on these, site visits twice. So we were a little over the top and said, wow, this is something that we can really do. We also had a summit that was led by the then head of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute and Nobel laureate Tom Cech to kind of get outside, like, because everybody's vested. Like, if you go to Down syndrome research and say, do you need money? And they're like, yeah, like, is this tractable? Yes. So we really wanted an outside opinion. So he had a summit of scientists within the field and outside the field come and look at it in 2006. And that helped inform our decision. So then we're like, okay, how do we do it? And then I don't know, we created a somewhat complicated model, called an affiliate model. And that's not a chapter model, like where, you have Down syndrome chapters or, Alzheimer's chapters. It's an affiliate model where we all come from the same parenthood, right, of our initial funding. And we said, okay, no one organization can do everything. We're going to invest in the first ever institute, a research institute for Down syndrome. That's kind of the umbrella, the Cernic Institute for Down syndrome. And then pediatric medical care, the C Center for Down syndrome at Children's Hospital. And then an adult clinic, which at the time we're like, we'll do that later. And then that's ending up at Denver Health, which is kind of the, safety net hospital here in Colorado. The idea is that we want to be national and international, but to really understand research and medical care, we needed to kind of run it in our backyard and bring it up to leadership and then go forward. So that's how anyway, it was a lot more work than we thought. But
Sure.
But it's doing so well and it's really delivering on its promise. And that's what's so exciting for me as a parent and me as a person who invested a lot of time in this.
What would you say was the approximate time frame where you would say, okay, this is the day that Global began its work?
I would say when we were established in 2009.
Okay.
But again, we signed agreements, we set up, endowments. But if you think about the C Center for Children's Hospital, that didn't start until the end of 2010, right? Like, so, it how the affiliates came on. And then we accidentally launched a fifth affiliate, which is the Alzheimer's and Cognition Center. So we didn't have that in the original plan, but it was so important, the overlap of those, Down syndrome and Alzheimer's, that we then invested in that as well. But our
Yeah.
challenge, of course, is how do we do good outreach, advocacy, government lobbying, and fundraising for all of us? That is a challenge, especially having been hit with COVID for 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some of the ways that you would say that Global is serving the Down syndrome community? And some of the things you've touched on just a little bit in your last answer, but maybe a little bit more information for our listeners in terms of what exactly is the Cernic Institute doing, or the C Center doing, or even the national things that you're doing on that stage as well.
Yeah. So after Sophia was born, really just a few months after, I flew to the National Institutes of Health and met the then director, Zerhouni, who then got numbers for me, because back then it wasn't transparent what was going to any disease or condition. And then he was shocked. He had that expression on his face saying, like, you're the least funded genetic condition by the NIH. If you do one thing, go create an institute. Autism has it, Fragile X has it, all these conditions have it, you don't have it. And so we went back and we took that very seriously. And that's kind of how we got on this journey. But the numbers were astounding. It was like 14 million for the leading cause of developmental delay in a year, compared to, say, autism, which was like at that time 180 or 190 million, compared to other diseases that have about the same population, which were also higher than that. So again, also, I think that there's a misunderstanding of research and medical care. Without the research, we really can't have guidelines. Like, we need clinical research that just says, like, oh, this is what we're finding, in this population. And then basic research, we're bringing it down more to a molecular level and saying, like, well, this is what we're finding. And then with those findings, then you can inform guidelines in medical care. So they're really two sides of the same coin. So I think that's a big thing that we did. We did this, and we got in there, and we have over 200 scientists working on that. And as you know, I think one of our big, deliverables that took us 10 years, like if you'd asked me when I started, it would take 10 years, was to get that NIH funding up for all people with Down syndrome, for all scientists with looking at the Down syndrome care. And we've been successful, right? So it's just been really heartwarming to see that in FY 2022, we have 115 million coming in versus, say, 14 million. And next year, hopefully, we're on track with report language to get 130 million. So this is what we're doing. And where does that money go? So in 5 years, we have generated, through our advocacy, 200 million that did not exist through this kind of trans NIH, and that's a whole nother story, trans NIH program for Down syndrome research that has benefited, nearly 1,000 scientists who are working on it. And it's like any industry. If you starve it and there's no money there, nobody's going to go into Down syndrome research, and everybody will go into autism. We want people to go into autism research, but we also want people to go into Down syndrome research.
And I thought that was really amazing. Obviously, those numbers are astounding, and the fact that so many self-advocates played a role in bringing that importance of research to the government. And I don't know that they knew that there was that much passion within the self-advocate community for, hey, I have the answer. I think one of them said, I think Frank Stevens said, I have the answer for Alzheimer's disease, and it's right in here. And he's pointing to his head, because there's so much that we can learn from our friends with Down syndrome that's going to benefit the general population as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, in the disability community, I think we can bring an and the versus or mentality to the table. I think when you're underfunded and kicked under the rug and ignored, you tend to sometimes have either a zero-sum game or a diminishing return. But at the end of the day, I think what we've done well is say, it's and. We should have great education and great medical care and great research and great social opportunities and great, it's not like one actually detracts from the other. All boats rise, actually.
Yeah.
When you start getting there. And I think that's something I hope that we've really proven to the community that it's and not or. And we really do, like, it's great, all right, we can have a job now, but like, and then if your health deteriorates between 40 and 60 and you can't do anything, that's not very good. So like, we're all contributing and we're all rowing in the same direction if we have like an additive mentality.
Yeah, I agree. And so what else? What are some other ways that you would like to highlight for what Global is doing in serving the community? So we talked about the research arm. What else would you like to highlight for us?
Yeah, there's so many exciting things. We do these grants, these national grants and international grants to Down syndrome organizations. And every year, some of them are education and outreach grants for medical care and research. And then some of them are employment grants. And they're really fun. We've done all sorts of novel funding. And we have about, I think, over 100 members now who apply for these grants. During COVID, I think we did a great service to our community by doing like 5 different things, right? One was we changed the grants to emergency relief grants. And really, there were people in great need of medical care, of a roof over their head, of food. There's so many people that we provided food to, or, had to bridge a gap for utility. So I think that never losing the connection of people with Down syndrome that we serve, because we serve them, and we do serve the local organizations who really are the ones on the front line. The other thing we did was we created the COVID-19 and Down syndrome resource, and then we also worked with the CDC to make sure that Down syndrome was then categorized as high risk, and it was right before the governors then had the mandate of in their own state saying who's priority. So it was nice that then, 25 states that just said, do what the CDC said, for people. And of course, the COVID vaccine is a choice, but for people who chose to get it, wow, you can imagine how frustrating it would have been if we would have been, at the end of the line versus front of the line, because we are 10 times more likely, right, to die or be hospitalized because of the third chromosome 21. So I think we've done like a lot of wonderful things. The other thing on the science side is that we've had a major breakthrough, as we thought. We said, okay, since we've been starved of any research, and we know there's 3 copies of chromosome 22, like, let's just like collect blood and look at some layers of information. Just by looking at the blood of 200 people in 2016, probably the biggest breakthrough in 20 years, Down syndrome can be categorized as an immune system disorder. Right. And all of a sudden, how you treat Down syndrome changes. And so that's really exciting, to know that there's also FDA approved drugs that actually stabilize the immune system. And, the results of those clinical trials that we're running right now are really promising. And in those people in the trials, it's transformative. So like, this is that rare opportunity where we see science being brought to the clinical setting in record time and improving health outcomes. So that's just ginormous.
And I know that's really interesting. And I know that another passion of yours is, particularly even as we started this podcast and you were sharing about how you remember being told about your daughter's diagnosis. I know another passion of yours is prenatal information to families. And if you want to highlight a little bit about what Global's done in that area too, I think that would be great for our listeners.
Absolutely. We were very lucky when we started to have the mentorship of the National Down Syndrome Congress. Like new people to the field aren't always treated all that great. And, people are like, what do you know? What are you doing here? And stuff. And to be fair, like, we didn't know a lot, and it was a lot harder, than what we thought. But NDSC was really exemplary in really mentoring us. And we quickly joined forces and created what we now call the prenatal and newborn Down syndrome information pamphlet. And it's informed by some of the leaders nationally and locally in the medical field, in the prenatal field. And it's just such an amazing free resource. And we were really excited because just this year, you're talking about nationals in this podcast, the National Down Syndrome Society joined us in the creation of this resource. And so our ability to get it into different languages, to deconstruct it, to be of more service for on the prenatal and the newborn, like let's even say like birth to 3 area, it has just grown exponentially. And of course, on the pediatric care, the C Center for Down Syndrome that we also support is now the largest in the U.S., arguably second largest in the world after Lejeune in France. And so, we have 2,200 unique patients. And so the research coming out of that in terms of like, how much morphine should we be giving these children? Like, what are the behavioral characteristics? So that research, or even like in terms of, dysphagia, we just created a whole criteria. So we're actually helping directly medical to medical in terms of improving health outcomes and getting that information disseminated nationally and internationally. And of course, because I'm actually first generation of an immigrant from China and an immigrant from Italy, like we're like a mini UN. I'm married to an English guy. So we know how to do the international stuff. So that's just really exciting that we're starting to really grow into our global name.
Yes. And so what are some of the major events that happen each year that Global puts on for the community, or also just from a fundraising perspective? What are some of the things that people can expect to see year after year?
Yeah, we're and not or. When we first started, people were like, well, are you awareness or are you fundraising? We're like, both. Like how can you not do both? Because there are a lot of fundraisers that don't have the people they serve as front and center. That's what we like about what we do. So we have the Be Beautiful, Be Yourself fashion show, the largest fundraiser in the world for people with Down syndrome. The people with Down syndrome are the models, putting that paradigm on its head, and they're paired with celebrities. Sometimes the celebrity is the person with Down syndrome, by the way. Sometimes it's just like a beautiful model. And we bring celebrities, sports celebrities, Hollywood celebrities. We've got amazing Quincy Jones Exceptional Advocacy Award winners. We've had the light, of course, with Jamie Foxx, and we're really devastated by DeAndre Dixon dying so tragically and early at just 36 years old. And that's why on the research side, the African American disparity of lifespan is a huge priority for us, and you're going to see us getting really active in that in May. So November 12th, Saturday in Denver, we're back in person for the first time in 3 years at the Beautiful Be Yourself fashion show. It's about 1,400 people. It is just the most fast-moving, fun event. I think, Dr. Velody, you've been there.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and then we have the Acceptability Gala in May, a smaller event, DC-based in DC. We're giving a Quincy Jones Award to a Republican and a Democrat. We're very much bipartisan. Everybody's allowed in our tent who wants to love on and improve the lives of people with Down syndrome. And then we have an ambassador with Down syndrome at that Acceptability Gala. So those are our 2 big ones. And then we do really fun things on World Down Syndrome Day. I think we're small enough at this point, although, we would love to grow, and we are growing pretty fast, that when it comes to a life or death situation, people call us, we triage, we get it done, and we drop everything that we're doing. So I think we're still very much human and, whatever, but we're also looking at that 6,000-foot research medical care landscape.
Yes. So someone listening to this podcast who says, well, I really love what Global is doing, and I want to be a part of that. I want to get involved with what they're doing. How would they do that? What would they be able, how would they partner with you?
Yeah. So I think, it depends on who you are, but I think one thing is participate in our research. If you give blood, that is worth its weight in gold, right? And that's really, you can give other samples too, but that's a mainstay. You give blood and you get into, and it's all de-identified and very safe, according to the highest standards of protection. And then we can have more breakthroughs, and we need what they call control. And that's just somebody without Down syndrome, and then somebody with Down syndrome, they match the age and all that kind of stuff. So if you're listening to this and you're a family member or you're a teacher and you love your students with Down syndrome, whatever, anybody can give that blood and make a huge impact. And there are different places where you can do that. The other thing is, of course, to donate. It sounds kind of like, it feels uncomfortable. I'm not good at fundraising. I'm like, I don't like to ask for money, but really it's, people would say like, well, you're giving people the opportunity. And it is true. We can't do anything without money and fundraising. So that's a big thing. Coming to our events and paying for a ticket is part of the fundraising, sponsoring a table. You can also sponsor a model with Down syndrome, and that's really exciting for people. So all of that. And then, of course, if you're in DC and you have the capacity to fly into DC, the advocacy piece is really important. And sometimes we activate people in certain cities that have somebody in their district or a senator who's very important to the NIH funding, that we also activate there. So again, it's almost unlimited. Like, if you speak another language, we can use you in a focus group. We do focus groups, we do surveys, sign up for our mailing list. Every little bit helps.
And we will definitely put the website to Global Down Syndrome Foundation in the show notes of today's podcast. So if people want more information, of course, of how they can get involved, that will be on the website there as well. Michelle, I know we just really skimmed the surface of what it is that Global is doing, but I really appreciate you joining me on the podcast today. Before we move on, I just wanted to make sure, is there anything else that you wanted to make sure that we highlighted, or any concluding remarks you wanted to make before we close the podcast?
Yeah, I think that, what we're all doing is trying to elongate life and improve health outcomes. And, no matter how small it is, there's this thing called regression in people with Down syndrome, very small percentage, but so devastating. We're on it. Like, we need to address all of these issues, and our finding in terms of immune system disorders has led us now to a treatment for regression that we just got a clinical trial grant for. So I just want people to, the handful of people who have that or know somebody who has that there's some hope out there. And we've got some really good clinical trials coming down the pipe to treat that.
Super exciting. And it's also so exciting, as we've done this Meet the National series, how wonderful it is that all of the organizations are working together. It really is a testament to the people that we serve, who we tend to see people with Down syndrome being a lot more team-oriented, perhaps, than those of us who don't have Down syndrome. And so it's wonderful to see the national organizations working together and really accomplishing some really great stuff together, and Global being a huge part of that as well. So thank you for everything that you are all doing as well.
Thank you, Dr. Velotti, and for being the glue that sticks us all together.
Well, I just, again, I thank you, and I thank our listeners for being a part of what we do as well. If you have any topics that you want us to cover on future podcasts, please do reach out to us at Down Syndrome Center at chp.edu. And if you want to partner with us in our mission at the Down Syndrome Center in Pittsburgh, including this podcast, please do go to givetochildrens.org/Down Syndrome Center. But until next time, bye-bye.